Hello, and thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America. Our guest today is Kimberly Peeler-Allen. She works in the space of gender, race, and politics. And I can tell you personally, she's a tremendous force in all three of those. She's the newly appointed Chair of Reproductive Freedom for All, formerly NARAL, with 4 million members across the country. The founder of Higher Heights, the organization that has changed the political power landscape for Black women in America, and an advisor to some of the top political people in the country, like New York Attorney General Letitia James. And Kimberly Peeler-Allen, thank you for being with us today.
Pleasure to be here.
For all of the fans of Letitia James, I want you to know that if it hadn't been for Kimberly Peeler-Allen, we shouldn't say she might have been able to do it otherwise.
Oh, you're too generous.
But for your force in her campaigns has been tremendous, and it's good thing that she's there.
Absolutely.
But we have you here now for other reasons. The breaking news is that you are now the chair of Reproductive Freedoms for All, and most people know it as NARAL for many years, 53-year-old organization. Why the name change?
Well, the name change came about because in 2018, the board and the movement said, you know what does NARAL even stand for?
You all didn't know.
Right, board members had to go back and look it up. And then we said, also looking at the landscape, and we knew, what was happening with the Supreme Court, that there was a high probability that we were really going to be in a fight for our reproductive lives in the near future. So we started doing what we always do, which is research. NARAL and Reproductive Freedom for All have really built their message and their work around research, and we continuously polled Americans across the country about how did they feel about reproductive access, reproductive freedom. And we found 8 in 10 Americans believe that pregnant people should have access to abortion care and reproductive freedom to make the decisions that they need for their bodies. So as we continue to do this research and refine and test, it was a long process. We started in 2018 and we just rolled it out last month that our new name is Reproductive Freedom for All, because we really see that abortion care is just part of our reproductive freedom, having the ability to take care of your family. So we also, are looking at paid family leave and looking at the care economy and all of these pieces that really are determinant, as we're now also looking at how transgender rights and the ability to have gender affirming care is all in your reproductive freedom that we are all so passionate about.
Well, this is an expansion of the work, at least publicly. I know that some of this work, it had been going on, but now, you've expanded your mission so that much more of the population that's discriminated against in a reproductive way can be taken care of.
Absolutely, and this has been a path that we have been on. The board did a strategic plan 2 years ago, and we rolled out our roadmap to equity, because we see so many people who are just not included in this process, who are not given the rights and the ability and agency to manage their own health care, because abortion care is health care. And so we put a real stake in the ground. Particularly, we started this process before the summer of 2020 and all of the uprising and the just stakes for justice and civil rights, and said, we are really going to be committed to this, and we've changed our name. We have this roadmap to equity where we are looking at every aspect of our work, both internally and externally, as to how we are making sure that we are being as inclusive and intersectional as possible.
Well, you've done this at a time that sort of puts a stake in the ground that you're not closing up and going away because of the Dobbs decision and all of that. In fact, ever more important that.
Absolutely. I mean, when we heard that the Dobbs case was coming, we knew that this was going to be a dire time for us as an organization, for our cause, for the movement. And we really decided that we were going to really focus on organizing and talking to Americans all across the country about how their legislative decisions, how their voting impacts their rights overall, and what we're seeing in states across the country, as well as at the national level. Now is the time to really double down and make sure that where there is access, that access remains affordable and truly accessible to all, not just in name only, and create spaces where there can be access for people who are living in states where those rollbacks have just been just so detrimental.
Right. So there are 4 million members. Now, what is the daily work of Reproductive Freedom for All?
So we see ourselves as a piece of this pie. We are really focused on legislative and the elections, because we know that when you have elected officials who support reproductive freedom, we are most likely going to be able to maintain or expand that access or fight back against those rollbacks. So we have a very expansive congressional team that works on campaigns, that mobilizes our members to talk to their members of Congress, to campaign and support candidates that are reproductive freedom advocates, to really be able to make sure that we are supporting those who stand with us, and that we are finding candidates and supporting those candidates who are running against those who are against reproductive freedom.
So I see on the website that you're endorsing candidates, and I was just thinking about the Alabama senator as an example.
Doug Jones, yes.
Well, Doug Jones, that you are supporting, he ran and lost to Tuberville, and the essence of the story of Tuberville, who, because of reproductive rights in the military, has stopped all approval. So there's an example of military raises, you know, of people moving up, promotions. So talk to us about that and trying to use that as an example of saying, look, you may not think it has a connection, but it has a connection to everything.
Absolutely, absolutely, because we see that the battle over reproductive freedom, it is more than just abortion care. It is about power and control. That's part of why we really were intentional in expanding our mission and expanding our commitment to the rights movement overall, because we see our access to the ballot, voting rights, as well as civil rights, criminal justice reform, economic justice, it is all interconnected. And the ability to control bodily autonomy and how we are able to interact in the universe overall is so intrinsically important to being an American, and how the right has really used this as a lever and a cudgel against and an opening to expand the rollbacks of our rights overall. We see that this is something that we cannot ignore, and we have to really, lean in and say, yes, we are for reproductive freedom, and we also see how this affects our military and pregnant people in the military, and the rights of people, regardless of where they are in our society, to be able to have control over themselves and be able to, achieve the American dream.
Well, the polling is on your side.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 8 in 10 Americans have said that they support reproductive access and abortion care. And that is something that, we have a very loud minority that have said, oh, we want, the nation wants a 6-week abortion ban or a 15-week abortion ban. But when you actually ask the question, and we have seen this in election after election, that is a losing proposition for them. We've seen what has happened in Michigan and in Kansas, where there were ballot propositions to support abortion care in Michigan and stop the rollbacks in Kansas, and people came out because that was the #1 issue that was important to them. Those were the primary issues on the ballot, and they had record numbers, and those propositions move forward towards expanding reproductive freedom.
So one of the other things that you are responsible for, in addition to Letitia James, but Higher Heights, where the presence of Black women, and you found that was at 20. It seems like forever, but it's a recent, what, 2011, 2010?
Yeah, 2011 we started, and we had only elected one black woman to the U.S. Senate. We had I think 14 black women in Congress at that point in time, and only one black woman who was a mayor of a major city. And now we have 9 black women who are mayors of the top 100 cities. We have now had 3 black women serve in the U.S. Senate, with the latest edition of LaFonza Butler in the last few weeks. And we continue to grow the number of black women in Congress overall. And most importantly, we are seeing black women step up and be fearless, be in the spirit of Shirley Chisholm, be unbought and unbossed in their leadership and standing up for their communities and saying, I want to be part of this process to make the world a better place for me and my family and my community overall.
Were we a little disappointed on the senator level, the last election, that we had some really great candidates that did not make it, didn't win? Florida and whatever.
Florida and North Carolina.
And North Carolina. I mean, really great candidates.
Phenomenal.
There was some complaint that those 2 women did not get the kind of support that they needed from their own party.
Yeah, well, I think overall we still are in a patriarchal society. We are still in a society where the majority of our leadership has been white and male. And the question of what is a viable candidate continues to loom over black women. And how, having this continuous conversation about how do black women lead? How do they bring the totality of their life experiences to the fore? And that makes them effective negotiators, that makes them effective legislators, that makes them effective leaders, that they can do this. And it does not just benefit black women or the black community, it benefits all people. And I'm really excited about this coming election in 2024, where we have 3 black women who are running for U.S. Senate. And I think there is a very strong likelihood that we could have possibly all 3 of them win. And that would be a historic marker, because we will have doubled the number of black women who have ever served in the chamber, while also putting these black women in a position at such an important time in our nation's history to be at the table and really being able to drive legislation that will help all boats rise.
So you think Barbara Lee in California will win?
There is a possibility.
A little complicated with LaFonza, who we all adore, but it was. What did you think about Governor Newsom? And he had promised to appoint a black woman. Barbara Lee was running, as are Adam Schiff and Katie
Porter.
Katie Porter. I mean, he could have appointed Barbara Lee.
He could have. And, We at Higher Heights have been very much out there from the very beginning that the governor needed to replace the only black woman in the U.S. Senate with another black woman. And we're grateful that he made that commitment. Of course, we would have loved to have seen Barbara Lee, but we are also very thrilled to see LaFonza, who has been a friend and supporter and partner through her role at Emily's List and has just been such a phenomenal leader in the labor movement. So it is a very complicated situation.
Yes.
As of today, Senator Butler has not declared that she is going to run for a full term. Barbara Lee is still working very hard on this race. And I think it is a very interesting landscape. California is a very complicated place.
To be sure.
So, I think the verdict is still out, but I think there is definitely a pathway for her. And Angela Alsobrooks, who's the county executive in Prince George's County, Maryland, is running a very, very strong campaign to take over that Senate seat. And we have Lisa Blunt Rochester in Delaware, who is currently the at-large member of Congress in Delaware, who is almost all but assured to have that seat.
Lisa will do it. So if we have Barbara Lee and Lisa, that's at least 2 of the 3.
Yeah.
But if LaFonza announces, and as we record this, as you say, that appointment is just very recent. So we don't know what will happen there. But what fun!
Yes. This is beyond our wildest dreams, to be honest with you, to have so many very viable Black women running and running in the same race. This is, as we say, this is the white boy problem. No one ever says that there are too many white men in a race. And for us to have so many really wonderful candidates, yes, it would be simpler if they would run individually, but but we don't shy away from the complexities and really being able to think and look at these candidates, not just on their broad missions and visions for the future, but let's get into the weeds. Let's really kick the tires with them and see who is the best.
Yeah, I want to ask you though about the dangers of Black women who seem to catch fire and hell from people on the right, for many people. I mean, talk to us about that. I mean, any person who decides to run, for a Black woman who decides to run, has got to assume that they will be attacked and viciously.
Absolutely. The violence, threats, and harassment that are directed at Black women in elected office up and down the ballot is absolutely appalling, and it is at record levels. We are seeing overall the vitriol in our political environment and conversation just toxic, and it is not just limited to Black women or women of color, and it also comes both from the other party but also internally as well. So we're seeing just this constant attack on these women for just existing. But to their credit, so many, as we have been talking to them over the years, have said, you know what, I'm not going to back down. This work is too important, and if I wasn't actually making progress, they wouldn't say anything to me at all. So they see it as a sign of positive movement, that they are changing the status quo and uplifting voices that hadn't previously been heard. So they're also taking very definite steps to protect themselves, their staffs, and their families, which is something
that's a shame. Because really, you have to consider, what's my budget for security?
Exactly.
Before I decide to put myself and my family in this position of running for political office, where I know just the fact that I'm a Black woman is going to incite violence.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is quite an experience. And also now we're hearing more of these women sharing their stories and sharing their practices of how they have kept themselves safe. Whether it is installing cameras on their homes or sharing recommendations for private security or just, cybersecurity, how they are hardening their own offices and their personal data to try and withstand this. And it's, a conversation that we hadn't previously had, but we're seeing that these women are really supporting each other. There are several institutes that are doing research around best practices, what can be done within legislative chambers, what can be done, best practices for your personal life, for your campaign, that go beyond, just don't, drive around by yourself at night. Unfortunately, we are at a point where it has to be, so much more advanced and sophisticated.
I think part of the fundraising, here's
Absolutely.
my campaigning and here's my security budget.
Absolutely.
This is what we're raising money for. So.
I was talking to a legislator in Georgia who said she needs $7,000 a month to pay for her security detail, just so that she can do the work of the people and be at public events, because she has had very viable death threats against her.
Incredible, incredible. Now, you're also at Rutgers, one of the finest, the study, doing all of the work about women in political life. Talk to us about that. You're a lecturer, you're doing part of the research and all.
Yeah, I am just truly honored to be a visiting practitioner at the Center for American Women in Politics, which, as you said, is the preeminent research arm on women in American politics. And I've been working with that team for now 5 years on their research and really making sure that there's an intersectional lens, how they are also bringing in the practical experience of those who are working in the field, taking the theory to practice for their students overall. And I lecture in classes at the graduate and undergraduate level about life in politics. How do you get involved in a campaign? What can you expect? As well as the importance of being intentional in lifting up other voices and the impact that that has on legislation and the body politic overall.
So you're there for that intersectional lens. Was it a lens that was missing? And I love the people at Rutgers.
Well, it was a
work.
wonderful evolution of time. When we started Higher Heights, one of the first things that we said was we needed to make sure that we had empirical data to back up what we already knew. And as we were looking at the research that was being done overall, we kept going back to the Center for American Women in Politics. So we called them and said, do you have the breakdown of this data for specifically Black women? And they said, actually, we do, and no one has ever asked us for it.
Wow.
So we went down to Rutgers, to New Brunswick, and sat with them and really started to work, at that point in time, and I think that was 2013 when we started working on our first Status of Black Women in American Politics report. And over time, we have just continued to partner. And in 2019, when I stepped away from the day-to-day work of Higher Heights, the director there reached out to me and said, we'd love to continue to have your insight on not just our research for Higher Heights, but our research overall, and making sure that it is intersectional and that we are expansive and thinking about all of these things, not just from a political theory standpoint, but how it actually realizes in the field.
And, we laugh about the story of how we first met through Higher Heights in a way. I heard about your work, you and Glenda had created this fabulous organization. And we were at some conference and I started stalking her actually to say, Kimberly, you need to come work with us at the ERA Coalition, where I was then, a co-president and then president at whatever. And then she became my boss, as the chair of the ERA Coalition board. But let's talk about the Equal Rights Amendment for a second, because as both of us, have used the words, there will be no equality until there is the Equal Rights Amendment attached as a part of the Constitution. Mm-hmm. So how optimistic are you that we're 100 years into this fight?
Exactly, 100 years into this fight, but we have had more movement in the last 2 years than we have had in probably the preceding 20. And it is a very exciting moment, and we have some very committed members in Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley and Congresswoman Cori Bush, who are carrying companion bills to move the ERA to Congresswoman Bush's bill is saying we have 28 states, it needs to be recognized, and the bill that Congresswoman Pressley is pushing forward continues to say we have the Equal Rights Amendment.
See the smile on my face.
Oh, absolutely.
every time you say Congresswoman Bush and Congresswoman Pressley, two Black women, elected officials who have both taken on the Equal Rights Amendment. For those who for so many years said it has nothing to do with Black women, the Equal Rights Amendment, it has everything to do with Black women.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think this is similar to the work of Reproductive Freedom for All. This is a moment in the movement where we are really expanding and really recognizing the role that people who are not white have in all of our critical movements. And this has been, when you talk to both members of Congress, they are saying this is so intrinsically important to their very existence and their success and the success of their communities, to be able to say that you cannot be discriminated based on sex. Full stop.
Full stop.
Full stop. Regardless of gender or regardless of race or anything else, that to be able to say that just really moves the needle so far forward to the advancement of true equality for all.
Well, 2024, what's your political prediction, having put many really important people in office and managed their campaigns and advised them? What advice are you giving to political candidates for 2024?
I would say my biggest advice, or most important piece of advice to candidates, is that you cannot take anything or anyone for granted. The margins in the House and the Senate and state legislatures across the board are so slim in so many places that you must work to really earn each and every vote. Communities who you think that are with you, go back and reaffirm that. Make sure that they feel engaged, answer any questions that they may have. Because this is a base turnout election. And if we are able to really make sure that all of our base voters, with the hundreds of thousands of inconsistent voters who may vote in presidentials, may not vote in presidentials, does this really work? Does it really have an impact? Making sure that they all really realize the importance of raising their voice, their civic voice, that they have a role in this. I think a lot of people in 2016 said, oh, well, I really thought Hillary was going to win, so I didn't go out and vote. And they saw that they did not get the outcome that they were anticipating because of that. So I would say for every elected official, every voter, your vote matters, your voice matters, their vote matters, their voice matters. Do not take anything for granted.
Okay, well, Kimberly Peeler-Allen, knowing how successful you've been, we're going to take that advice and run with it. Thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you for your contributions across the political spectrum, through the years of the changes that you've brought about.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I'm so glad I stalked you,
So am I.
Our guest today has been Kimberly Peeler-Allen. She's the new board chair of Reproductive Freedom for All. She's a political guru. Thank you for being with us, and thanks for you all out there for joining us. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America, and we will see you the next time.